The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. I stand before the factory gates at dawn, heart pounding as the steam whistle screams its final warning. In one hand, the pink slip trembles like a verdict. In the other, my lunch pail feels heavy with years of memories. The gates clanged shut behind me, metal echoing through the empty lot, each clang tightening the knot in my chest. 40 years, 2 months from retirement. They called it downsizing. I called it crucifixion. My breath caught as the lock clicked, sealing what I thought was security and purpose. My St. Joseph medal rests cold against my chest, a small talisman against the void. The steam hissed again, mocking the quiet ache in my bones. I press my free hand to the medal, feeling its weight, remembering every wire welded, every bolt turned, every prayer whispered on the factory floor. The world beyond these gates feels both terrifying and strangely inviting. I step back, the pink slip crumpling slightly in my grip, and inhale the morning air. But as I exhaled, a strange freedom filled me. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord. Colossians 3:23. I carry a rosary during every shift, bead a silent prayer as I guide the welding torch. Each evening, I light a St. Joseph candle in our break room, praying for my co-workers' safety. For years, I taught Sunday school at St. Anne's. On holidays, I visited the nursing home with prayers and warm smiles. I learned hard daily lessons of humility and trust. I started at Midwest Tool and Die at 18 out of high school. My father introduced me to the foreman, who handed me a welding mask and said, "Show us your work ethic." From that day, I put my heart into every task, drilling, grinding, bolting, welding. My co-workers became family. At 19, I met Eleanor at a parish dance. We married when I was 20. Together, we raised our daughter, Marisol, in a house filled with ABBA tabs and Bible verses scribbled on the refrigerator. 10 years ago, Eleanor fell ill and passed away in her sleep. Raising Marisol alone tested me. I learned to balance nursing school tuition with prayer intentions. Marisol worked at the grocery store while I took overtime shifts. When she graduated as a nurse, I sewed her white coat by hand and cried tears of pride. Marisol's strength became my rock. When she married, she and her husband had Lily, my granddaughter. Lily lives with us sometimes, and when she draws me welding, I keep that picture tucked into my toolbox. My dream is to fund Lily's college with my pension. 63 days remain until my pension vests. I mark each sunrise by moving a bead on my wooden cross in my workshop. Each day feels sacred, a step closer to securing a future for Lily. Each paycheck, I tuck a portion into an envelope labeled Lily's College Fund, slipping it between my blueprints and welding gloves. The envelope already feels heavy with promise. A roof overhead, and a chance for Lily to chase dreams my own hands once molded. At night, I trace her name in gentle letters and whisper a prayer. Guide her steps, O Lord. Inside the plant, machines drone like hymnals. Conveyor belts hum, presses hiss, and welding torches crackle. When the foreman inspects our line, I remind him that our work matters beyond metal. These parts save lives on highways. We honor God with our craftsmanship. He nods, and I feel shared resolve. On Sundays, I trade my welding jacket for a crisp shirt and tie. At St. Anne's, I greet parishioners and ferry hymnals. Leading Sunday school, I taught children that faith without works is dead. I asked them, "How do we love our neighbor?" They answered, "Feed the hungry, care for the sick." I smiled, recalling my visits to the nursing home. I explained, "Your little hands can show big love." Rumors ripple through the break room. The new plant manager plans layoffs. I hear whispers that 100 positions might go by September. My heart tightens at each rumor, but fear does not rule me. I slip my rosary through my fingers and recall Colossians. Work with all your heart, as for the Lord. I focus on each weld and bolt. At home, Marisol balances nursing shifts and motherhood. Lily practices piano in the living room. Her fingers dance across the keys. When I return late, I stand at the doorway, listening to her practice. I light a candle for Eleanor and speak aloud. "I carry you within me, my love." Sometimes I catch my reflection in the photo of us on our wedding day, and I feel bittersweet joy that our love shaped me. My workshop doubles as a sanctuary. On my workbench, I display Lily's drawing, a wooden cross, and my rosary. Beneath them, prayers on scraps of paper, intentions for Joe recovering from surgery, Mary undergoing chemo, and for Lily's future. I pray during lunch breaks, tracing the cross with my fingertip and whispering, "Lord, be with us." The ticking clock of 63 days until pension vesting feels a countdown. Each dawn, I rise before sunrise, wash my face, and whisper, "Lord, guide today's work." I walk to the plant as dew sparkles diamonds on grass. The red brick facade greets me, its windows like watchful eyes. Inside, I inhale the scent of machine oil and heated metal. My rosary rests in my pocket, its beads cool against my heart. Though Eleanor has gone, her spirit guides me. She once said, "Willie, your work is sacred." I carry her words as I feed the furnace, keeping a flame in the welder. I tell younger welders, respect the fire. It can create or consume. Let your work reflect his light. They listen, and I see in their eyes the same purpose I once felt. Soon, this chapter of my life will close. In 63 days, I will clock out final time and collect my pension. I will stand on a new threshold with Lily by my side, ready to fund her dreams. Yet I know my work is never done. I will continue serving, teaching faith, and praying. My hands will find new ways to serve, shaping bowls in the community kitchen or guiding welders in evening classes at the local college. For now, I savor each welding spark, as if each were a star. I hold to Colossians' promise that every task, no matter how humble, is worthy when offered to the Lord. I tighten the bolt on one component, let the rosary rest against my chest and whisper, "Amen." Tomorrow I will rise again. 62 days until vesting. Today, I work with all my heart as working for the Lord. Do not exploit the poor because they are poor. Proverbs 22:22. I remember the day I discovered the defective brake parts like it was etched in steel. Leaning over the conveyor, I saw grooves on the rotor mounting flange, too shallow for safety. When I mentioned it to my supervisor, he waved me off. "Follow the specs." My hands froze. My father taught me honesty. My wife taught me integrity. How could I remain silent while parts destined for highways risked lives? That night I stayed late. I traced the serial numbers back to a batch flagged in the QC logs. Someone had miscalibrated the gauge on purpose to meet quotas. My chest tightened as I realized the danger. Trucks carrying these brakes could kill families. I gathered evidence, emails, photographs of the faulty gauge, and drove to the Union Hall. Brother Thompson, the retired rep, studied my evidence silently. "Walter, this goes to the top." He handed me printed orders from management to bypass inspections. Each word burned my conscience. He warned me, "If you take this to OSHA, they'll target you." I spent the next morning filing a whistleblower report with OSHA, handing over emailed directives, QC records, and photos. My heart pounded as I clocked back in. Each weld felt heavier, every machine hum a reminder of impending confrontation. When OSHA confirmed an investigation, relief mingled with dread. 2 days later, management struck back. I arrived for the evening shift, and the foreman summoned me to the office. Inside, the plant manager and security guard glared. They accused me of stealing welding pliers and a torque wrench. But those tools were mine, used daily for decades. My protests fell on deaf ears. The manager slid a pink slip across the desk. "You're terminated for theft," he said flatly. My blood ran cold. "This is a setup," I managed. He shrugged. "Your pension's frozen pending investigation. Now leave." I felt the world shift beneath me as security guided me out, co-workers staring in stunned silence. News of my firing spread by dawn. Walking down Elm Street, neighbors crossed the street, ignoring my nod. At the hardware store, the owner wouldn't look at me. The diner's usual greetings were gone. My reputation lay in ashes, the hum of gossip sharper than any machine. I overheard someone say, "Always knew he was too proud," and felt a punch in the gut. At home, I sat in my workshop, head in my hands. Lily's drawing, me with a halo, lay on the bench, my eyes blurred. Without my pension, Lily's tuition was at risk. I traced the lines with trembling fingers, recalling Eleanor's gentle guidance as she sewed my jacket after my first day at the plant. I whispered to her portrait, "How did we stray?" I called union reps and lawyers, recounting the planted tools and defective parts, but each call felt like pushing a boulder uphill. The younger union rep said, "Management holds the power. They can freeze your pension indefinitely." I asked, "Will you testify?" He hesitated. "I'll try." My nights became restless. Bills piled on the kitchen table like gravestones. At night, I lit the St. Joseph candle, prayed for deliverance, and replayed Proverbs. "Do not exploit the poor, because they are poor." The words felt like a promise as much as a warning. Marisol and Lily huddled in the living room, eyes wide, afraid. I forced a smile. "I'll find a way." Yet the fear gnawed at my spirit like rust on steel. Walking to the plant, I paused at the locked gates, heart pounding. Machines inside hummed as if mocking me. My hands itched to hold the torch. But the gates stood firm. I traced my fingers along the cool chain-link fence, remembering the first day I stepped through these gates at 18. Pride gave way to pain. Neighbors whispered as I passed. Old Mrs. Hernandez spat on the sidewalk. Kids on bikes pointed and laughed. I felt invisible, then hated. Yet I clung to Isaiah's promise. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. Each step past familiar yards felt like walking through enemy lines. Letters piled on my kitchen table. Foreclosure notice. Overdue tuition bill. Marisol fought tears as she tried to calculate expenses. Lily hugged my leg. "Papa, it's okay." My throat tightened. How could I bear her burden? The weight of responsibility settled heavy on my shoulders. One afternoon, I visited the nursing home where I volunteered. I sat with Mr. Jacobs, who patted my hand. "Son, You always did right by us. His faith in me felt like sunlight in my chest. I helped Mrs. Pearson eat her pudding, offered prayers for her comfort. Yet at home, the bills loomed like storm clouds. Nightmares plagued me. A screech of metal, Lily running into traffic. I jolted awake, cold sweat clinging. I replayed the events, each moment of betrayal, and prayed until dawn. The quiet of the workshop haunted me. Sparks danced in my mind's eye. The union rep finally called. OSHA visited and confirmed the defective parts. Relief washed through me, only for it to fade when he added, "Pension stays frozen until the hearing." An endless wait stretched ahead. Each sunrise felt like a countdown to doom. Then neighbors began to return. One by one, co-workers and friends knocked on my door, offering statements and support. Brother Thompson stood tall. "We believe you, Walter." Their solidarity ignited hope. I realized the betrayal was not the end. Truth still had power. At the plant's conference room, I faced managers, lawyers, and OSHA reps. My accusers glared, but I met their eyes. The quality logs, emails, and union witnesses formed a shield around me. When the OSHA representative listed the evidence against management, a hush fell. The manager's face drained of color as they admitted falsifying inspection records. A week later, a letter arrived. My pension would be reinstated with back pay and damages. Lily's tuition was secured, and management faced penalties. I prayed over the news, tears slipping silently. I placed the letter on the workbench, next to Lily's drawing, and inhaled deeply. Walking back to the plant's gates, not as an employee but as a witness to justice, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. Neighbors cheered from porches. Former co-workers clapped me on the back. I smiled through tears, whispering proverbs one last time. He lifts the needy from the dust. He seats them with princes. At home, Lily held my hand as I placed her drawing beneath the rosary on my workbench. Marisol watched, hope blooming in her eyes. The workshop felt warm, familiar, like the embrace of Eleanor's spirit. The betrayal, though deep, could not drown the promise of redemption. Though the road had been pummeled by deceit, grace emerged in the outstretched hands of community and faith. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for lifting me from the ashes." I carry the scars as reminders to honor truth each day. In my workshop, the machine's hum becomes a hymn of hope. May my story remind others that integrity, though costly, yields far greater returns when we place our trust in grace always steadfastly. My God, why have you forsaken me? Matthew 27:46. The river's current rushed beneath the wooden bridge. In one hand, I gripped my work boots, worn witnesses to 40 years of labor. My palms trembled as I stared at the dark water. My body ached from heartbreak, and my spirit felt mangled like metal under a faulty press. Days ago, I was a craftsman with purpose. Now, I am cast aside, reduced to whispers and pitying glances. The plant gates mock me even in memory, locked tight, keeping out a man who vowed never to compromise integrity. Every face seems to dart away. Each passing engine sounds like an accusation. I carried my shame to the river's edge, boots in hand, and wondered why God's promise felt distant. I closed my eyes and hurled the boots into the swirling water. They vanished with a muffled splash. The act was both confession and release. No longer craftsman, no longer provider, only a shell adrift. A raw prayer escaped my lips. I honored you with every weld, every shift. Was integrity my sin? The words hung heavy in the cold air. I recalled Eleanor's gentle voice saying faith guides us through trials. But that comfort now felt like a mocking refrain. Each night, I knelt before the St. Joseph candle on my workbench. Flames danced, shadows licked the walls. I whispered my pain, begging for understanding. The world heaped shame, but my heart screamed, "Where are you, Lord?" Sleep fled me. Nightmares replaced dreams. I saw Lily's face contort in sorrow, Marisol pacing, bills piling like gravestones. My hands found the rosary, fingers tracing beads as I sought solace. Yet, the beads felt cold, lifeless. I prayed for strength, but my voice cracked with despair. The union's promise felt distant. My lawyer's optimism failed to quell anxiety. Every knock at the door, I hoped for redemption, but only silence answered. One afternoon, drained, I wandered to the workshop. My drawers lay bare without boots. My favorite hammer felt alien in my hand. I sank beside the workbench, head bowed. My eyes fell upon Lily's drawing, crayon, representing me with a halo. At the bottom, Papa the hero. A fresh ache welled as tears blurred the image. Her innocence ignited a spark amid darkness. I lifted the drawing and pressed it to my chest. A memory surfaced. Lily running to me after her first recital, arms wrapped tight. I felt joy then, pure and untainted by betrayal. I whispered, "What would you do, little one, if you saw me now?" The drawing reminded me of a truth buried under shame. Love remains when all else falters. I placed the drawing against my rosary, finding jagged hope. I could not let Lily's belief die. The water still churned beneath the bridge, but my spirit stirred. Though my boots were gone, a new journey called. I would reclaim purpose not for pride, but for love and faith. I rose, chest tight, determined. The air filled my lungs as I flicked the candle's flame. I whispered a vow. I will not be broken. With each bead I prayed, I felt grace reaching through the shadows, urging me to stand. In that moment, my spiritual abyss began to shift. The river's roar dimmed as the promise of grace flickered within. The truth will set you free. John 8:32. The morning sun had barely risen when Brother Thompson arrived at my door. His weathered face bore relief and urgency. He carried a thin manila folder. I led him to the kitchen table, where Lily's drawings and overdue bills covered the table. He opened the folder, revealing a printed email dated 2 weeks before my dismissal. My heart pounded as I read lines directing bypass of quality inspections on brake parts. Brother Thompson's voice trembled. "This is your vindication, Walter. Management plotted to cut corners and profit." The words settled over me like sunrise after a long night, painful yet illuminating. I traced the email's lines with a shaky finger, recalling my night discovery of grooves too shallow to meet safety standards. The betrayal had cut deep, but truth offered redemption. That afternoon, the union's investigative team convened in a cramped conference room. They verified the email's authenticity, cross-referencing timestamps and factory logs. I described the near disaster when Miguel, a truck driver, nearly went off a cliff because the defective brakes failed under load. He returned, shaken, and embraced me. "You saved my family!" His testimony would be pivotal. Later, I sat alone in my living room, the email folder open on my lap. A whisper echoed. You thought you lost your job. I gave you your mission. Each breath felt charged with purpose. The betrayal ended. Revelation began. That evening, I stood before dozens of co-workers and their families in the Union Hall. Concern and hope mixed. I held the folder and spoke. I never wanted glory. I only wanted to honor my work and protect lives. This email proves management endangered us. We will not let profit triumph over safety. Murmurs rose as I read each line aloud. Their nods and tears recalled Eleanor's faith-filled lessons. Love demands action. Early the next morning, OSHA arrived with subpoenas and evidence requests. I watched as investigators entered the plant, clipboards in hand. Conveyor belts slowed to a standstill. Workers gathered at gates, whispers filling the air. My chest tightened, but hope buoyed me. The OSHA representative emerged. We have enough to shut down the defective lines and review all inspections. Relief washed over me, mingling with gratitude for God's guiding hand. Back home, Lily waited with a hand-lettered card. Papa, you are my hero. Tears blurred my vision. I held her words close, her faith reminding me why. I placed the card on my workbench beside my rosary, whispering a prayer of thanks. 2 days later, a letter from OSHA arrived. The plant's flawed assembly lines would suspend operations immediately. Management faced a federal audit. My pension was reinstated with back pay and damages. Lily's tuition was secure. I clasped the letter to my heart, gratitude mingling with humility. I tucked it alongside Brother Thompson's folder, a testament to truth's power. In the following weeks, I testified at hearings, recounting every detail: the email directives, Miguel's near miss, and management's deception. My voice remained steady as I spoke of integrity and faith. Each word felt guided by divine purpose, fulfilling John's promise: the truth will set you free. On the day of the ruling, management issued a public apology. The plant manager, voice trembling, resigned, stating, "Your mercy changed my heart." I accepted his words with grace, knowing justice and compassion intertwine when God leads. I called Lily. Her joyful laughter and promise to bake brownies echoed through the phone, filling me with warmth. Returning to my workshop, I found solace in the hum of machines. I held the email folder to my chest, a tangible reminder that even in betrayal, God's light breaks through. I placed it in a wooden box inscribed with Lily's name and today's date, 07/15/2025, ensuring future generations would know the cost of truth and the power of grace. In the stillness, I heard that whisper once more. You thought you lost your job. I gave you your mission. I closed my eyes, a gentle smile curving my lips. My hands, once instruments of metal, now held witness to a higher calling. And I knew my journey, though forged in fire, had purpose beyond measure. Act justly, love mercy, walk humbly. Micah 6:8. I sat in the Union Hall, coffee warming my hands as 30 co-workers waited. I recalled Micah's call: act justly, love mercy, walk humbly. Today, we present truth. I looked at each face, men and women whose livelihoods depended on this fight. I stood and said, we have evidence, emails, testimonies, Miguel's near miss. When we testify, present facts. No anger, just clarity. A silent pledge passed through the room as heads nodded. Over the next days, I met workers one by one. Mark, whose daughter depended on his health benefits, trembled, describing faulty parts. I held his hand and said, "Speak calmly and stick to facts." In Maria's trailer, she whispered, "They starve us for speaking up." I met her eyes. "We'll feed each other." I provided notes and practice questions so they could testify confidently. I even arranged carpools to the courthouse so families could support one another. That night, I used my last savings to buy rice, beans, flour, and canned goods. I cleared my garage, arranged shelves, and printed a sign, "For workers in need." I remembered Miriam, a grandmother, arriving with arthritic hands. I handed her a bag and she said, "God bless you." On opening day, families arrived quietly, heads bowed. I filled heavy bags while recalling Jesus feeding 5,000. One mother, Anna, held her toddler and whispered, "You risked everything." I met her gaze. "If they starve my pension, I'll feed their families." Lily stood on a crate, sorting boxes. Marisol organized church volunteers. Donations came, eggs, bread, produce. The pantry became a beacon of hope, and Miriam returned weekly for supplies and prayers. Hearings began in the courthouse's hushed halls. In the defense pew, I saw the plant manager, head bowed. During a break, I carried coffee into the courtroom and placed a cup before him. He looked up, surprised. "For the thirst of truth," I whispered, returning to my seat. When called to testify, I stepped into the witness box. The courtroom fell silent. I am Walter Vega. For 40 years, I worked at Midwest Tool and Die. Lives were at risk when flawed parts slipped past inspections. I acted on faith and duty. I described the miscalibrated gauge and Miguel's near-fatal crash, speaking calmly as judges and attorneys listened. Co-workers followed. Louis detailed finding cracked rotors. Angela recounted hushed conversations about dangerous parts. Javier shared nights fearing for his son's safety. Each testimony, factual and calm, unraveled management's defense. Between sessions, I returned to the pantry, handing care packages to families waiting outside. A father asked, "How do we keep faith when they fight us?" I placed a bag in his arms. "With unity, prayer, and mercy." His nod was both weary and hopeful. On the final hearing day, the judge's gavel fell and his voice rang. "We find for the workers, pension benefits are to be reinstated retroactively, with damages awarded. We commend the compassion displayed, even toward those accused." Relief washed over me as families embraced. Stepping into the afternoon sun, warmth kissed my cheeks. I recalled Micah's words. Justice, mercy, humility. I noticed spring flowers budding in the yard, a sign that new life arises, even in hardship. Though challenges remained, rebuilding trust, restoring dignity, today marked a turning point. I paused on my porch, fingers tracing my rosary, whispering a prayer of thanks and renewed purpose. Back home, Lily ran into my arms, her laughter echoing through the hallway, whispering, "Papa, you made everything right." Her joy reminded me that hope endures beyond any trial. I lifted her, tears pooling in my eyes, and prayed silently, "Thank you, Lord." I felt grace guiding every step. In my garage, shelves brimming with supplies stood as reminders of love's work. I stood between them, a humble servant called to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly in his light always. Blessed are those who hunger for righteousness. Matthew 5:6. When OSHA's notice arrived, workers gathered outside the plant with cautious hope. The letter declared unsafe lines closed, my pension reinstated, and damages awarded. I read it aloud under a grey sky. Relief washed over me, mingling with tears. Neighbours cheered, and co-workers embraced me. Mary, a loader, said, "Walter, you saved us." I recalled Matthew's promise. Blessed are those who hunger for righteousness. In the empty office, the plant manager's resignation letter lay on his desk. Earlier, during an OSHA interview, he had apologized. "Your mercy broke me." His words felt like a confession. I paused, placed a hand over the letter, and prayed that he might rebuild his life with integrity. I whispered, "Lord, guide him home." That afternoon, the union convened a meeting at the parish hall. I shared my story. The defective parts, the planted tools, and long nights of doubt. Co-workers followed, recounting moments when conscience urged them to speak, but fear silenced them. A pastor offered a prayer of solidarity, and we realized our unity, grounded in faith, had toppled injustice. With pension secured, I sought new purpose and accepted a teaching position at the community college. In my first welding class, 20 students gathered around workstations. I held up a steel pipe and said, "Weld with integrity and let your work reflect God's glory." Sparks flew as they practiced. I guided their hands, emphasizing precision. Lily, now a freshman, stood at the back and whispered, "Papa, you're teaching them to build more than metal." Her words warmed my heart. Determined to help injured families, I used pension excess to establish the Vega Injured Workers Fund. I drafted bylaws, quarterly reviews, and volunteer oversight. Our first distribution served 10 families. A mother said, "Your gift gives us hope." I knelt and blessed them as volunteers handed out groceries. Donations arrived from neighbors. We met monthly, reviewing cases and ensuring transparency. I reminded the committee, act justly, love mercy, walk humbly. The plant reopened under new leadership committed to safety. A worker-led committee oversaw daily inspections, checking helmets and reviewing quality logs. Morale rose as trust replaced suspicion. I visited often as a mentor, offering guidance. One morning, Assembler Carlos approached me. "Mr. Vega, I want to stand for what's right." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let faith guide your path." At home, evenings brimmed with quiet blessings. The aroma of chicken soup simmering on the stove welcomed me. Lily reviewed her textbooks at the dining table, determination furrowing her brow. Marisol organized nursing workshop materials on the countertop. I settled into a chair with my Bible and rosary, tracing each bead while reflecting on Colossians. Work with all your heart, as for the Lord. Later, I prepared envelopes for Lily's tuition and fund contributions, sealing each with care. One Sunday, the pastor invited me to speak at St. Anne's. I recounted our journey, discovering faulty brakes, the shutdown of unsafe lines, and restoration of dignity. I spoke of God's whisper. You thought you lost your job. I gave you your mission. Parishioners wept as I urged them to let faith ignite action. We concluded with a hymn of thanksgiving, voices united in hope. As the final note faded, we joined hands in prayer, committing to serve justice in our community. Later, I returned to the workshop, where machines hummed like a hymn. I placed Lily's drawing, stick figure halo and all, beside my rosary on the workbench. My story lived in these walls, proof that truth and grace transform us. I adjusted my welding helmet, inhaled the scent of heated metal, and whispered a prayer for the students who would forge futures filled with purpose and integrity. As dusk settled, I walked to the riverbank where despair once led me. Now I carried a small wooden boat filled with seeds and flowers donated by neighbors. I set it adrift and watched it glide on gentle waves. Petals caught the fading light, a beacon for those still in darkness. I whispered, "Let these blooms guide you to light." The river carried my prayer downstream. Standing on the shore, I felt the weight of every trial lift from my shoulders. Matthew's promise echoed in my heart. "Blessed are those who hunger for righteousness, for they will be filled." In the whisper of wind and the ripple of water, I sensed God's purpose unwavering, guiding my journey toward justice, mercy, and steadfast faith. He has filled the hungry with good things. Luke 1:53. The welding torch hums softly in the background as I watch my students practice fillet welds, their laughter mingling with the gentle hiss of heated metal. Memories flicker across my mind. The day I held that pink slip, uncertainty gripping me like a vice. The river's roar beneath the bridge where I cast away my boots, and the sound of Eleanor's prayer as she lit the St. Joseph candle each evening. Through it all, a single truth remains. They took my job, my reputation, my security. But in the emptiness, I found a truer vocation. Building up the broken. The factory gave me a title. Grace gave me a legacy. I recall Sundays at the pantry, handing bags of food to families with trembling hands. One mother, eyes wet with gratitude, whispered, "God sent you." I felt an ache in my chest as I folded the final sack of rice, recalling Luke's promise. He has filled the hungry with good things. Those words became living scripture as children clutched packages of beans, eyes shining with hope. Today, my workshop feels fuller than ever. Steel plates lean against workbenches, and welding masks hang like guardians of purpose. Lily sits beside a volunteer, reading scripture verses to children waiting for dinner. Her clear voice carries power, reminding me of Eleanor's belief that faith, when shared, becomes a beacon. The hum of the torch, the clang of metal, the murmur of voices. These sounds form a symphony of redemption. My hands move skillfully as I sculpt a steel cross for the pantry's wall. Each bead of weld honors those who suffered injustice and celebrates those who extended mercy. I think of Brother Thompson's steadfast faith, the unity of co-workers who testified calmly, and the manager transformed by mercy. Their stories intertwine like filaments of a grand tapestry, each thread strengthened by sacrifice and compassion. In the quiet moments, I trace the rosary in my pocket, recalling nights of prayer when doubt threatened to extinguish hope. Today, doubt feels distant, a shadow replaced by light, purpose, and renewed determination. I see in my students' faces the promise of tomorrow. Skilled welders who understand that every joint they strengthen can heal a community and build a future grounded in justice. As dusk settles, the cross glimmers under soft overhead lights. Lily closes her book and smiles at me with pride. I step back, the torch cooling at my side. I breathe deeply, grateful for every soul this journey touched. In that moment, I sense the fullness of Luke's promise, not just in bread and rice, but in lives restored by grace and anchored in love.